Welcome to Beyond the Business Card podcast.
She'd always say beauty is not vanity, and it's the way it makes people feel and how it changes their lives is quite profound. There shouldn't be any CEO who doesn't spend time watching people shop because the amount you learn from that is crazy. Entrepreneurship should start from the consumer backwards because you really need to figure out who's buying what you're buying and why they're buying it and deliver value so that they buy it. And you can't do it unless you're walking in their shoes and understanding what you're doing. And where you learn that is on the shop floor. Actually, we also got very fortunate. Fortune favors the brave, apparently. We grew through COVID and we grew post-COVID as well. We are the largest luxury Ayurveda chain in the world in terms of global footprint. We've got 145 locations across 31 countries and growing.
What I love about Shalin Balasuriya's story is how he's turned a Sri Lankan family business into a global wellness brand, growing through COVID, scaling worldwide, proving that creativity and resilience still win.
Leverage Sri Lanka. Sri Lanka is still largely unknown. Sri Lanka's culture is unknown. Sri Lanka's what grows on our soil is unknown. The wealth we have in history is unknown. Arts and culture is relatively unknown. And in a world looking for unique things, we've got a crap load of it here. Leverage that.
Hi guys, and welcome back to Beyond the Business Card podcast with me, your host, Justin Maguire. And today we have a very special edition. Today we're coming live from Sri Lanka. I've recently made Sri Lanka my home, and I'm really excited to have an my first international guest and a super high profile guest. I don't know if you've been to Sri Lanka, but if you have, you would have seen Spa Salon. My family loved the brand. We use the brand. Spa Salon is now across 33 different countries. I think that's right.
Correct.
And expanding internationally, coming to the UAE as well. We're very pleased to welcome the co-founder, Shalin Balasuriya, to our show today. Shalin, welcome.
Thank you for having me.
It's an absolute pleasure, my friend. It's an absolute pleasure. I appreciate you coming 30 minutes to see us. I did not realize that the studio I booked was actually nowhere near you. So I appreciate you making the trip down as well.
Oh, happy to be here.
What we do in this show is we actually talk about the journey of the entrepreneur. Now, as I said to you off camera, I've seen the good, the bad, and the ugly when it comes to growing my own business. And you've obviously built a very successful business. And what I want to do is I want to sort of go back and understand the early years, understand, what made you want to start this great business. So just tell us a bit about where you come from. Tell us a bit about your family background, if you will.
So a question I always get, or we always get, is the business is founded by myself and my brother. How do two guys end up in cosmetics, in beauty, in wellness, out of almost nowhere? But the truth is, it all comes from our home where we grew up in. Our mom, Janet Balasuriya, was kind of the patron of beauty in Sri Lanka. She started Sri Lanka's first homegrown beauty care products. She started Sri Lanka's first beauty school, first chain of salons. And growing up in that household, we actually saw our mom create her first product using cake mixes in the pantry, and we'd help out and all that. So we grew up around this. We grew up watching her scale something where thousands of people started using it. We kind of were subject to experience her ethos on beauty and wellness because she'd always say beauty is not vanity, and it's the way it makes people feel and how it changes their lives is quite profound. And I still remember back in the day, it was no emails and stuff. There were like big bags of mail that used to come over for people asking for beauty advice, and she'd sit and respond to all of these week on and off, and it was crazy. She really took pride, or she took it very seriously, that this had a real impact on people's lives. And I think that got really ingrained in us as well, and we take what we do very seriously because of that as well. It's beyond the business, really.
Okay. So your mother sounds like she was a real sort of driving force in your life.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And you say we, so I assume you talk about you and your brother.
Yes. So I come from a family of 5, 2 brothers, 2 sisters, and me. Huge age gaps. My oldest brother is 25 years older than me.
Okay.
My brother, who's co-founded this with me, is the one just before me, and we have a 13-year gap. So it's a very interesting family. So growing up, I grew up with my nephews and nieces who are about my age.
Yeah.
So it's been it's been interesting, and even right now, apart from my brother, 2 of my sisters work in the business, in the larger business as well.
Okay.
So it's very much family owned and operated, and it's been a fun ride.
And where do you? So you're actually the youngest.
I'm the youngest.
The youngest.
By far.
Wow. So you were parented several times then.
Oh, yes, absolutely. But by the time I came around, my parents had given up and got the others to look after me.
But did that put any pressure under yourself? Because you brought up in by sounds of it, quite a successful driven family. You coming in as the youngest. My father was the youngest of 5 actually, and when and all my uncles did phenomenally well. But when I asked him sort of how did that feel, and he said it was one of the toughest parts was growing up with having multiple parents and actually just the pressure of feeling like you had to do something. Did you feel that?
Not at all, really. See, although I grew up in this framework of having much older siblings, by the time I was old enough to remember now, looking back, a lot of them were out of the house. Yes, they had played a huge role when I was an infant and a toddler and so on. But after that, they were married and out of the house. And it was my brother and I who actually lived together and grew up together, the one who's the co-founder here. So he's had a profound impact on my life. Because he, as a human being, is very driven, extremely intelligent, straight A student, did very well in university, all that. He played a big role in developing my mom's business as well. So he's possibly my biggest inspiration. He almost coached me to being who I was or who I became later. So that's how things played out, really.
Mm-hmm. And was, I suppose, wellness ingrained? Like, did you feel like wellness was the industry for you, or did you have any other passions and pursuits that you wanted?
So it was more beauty at that stage. So it was beauty from a perspective of healing, beauty from perspective of using natural ingredients and so on. The wellness thing started, I'll go back to the start of how Sparsilon came about. So we were working for my mother's business at that stage, which is a cosmetic brand. A mass market cosmetic brand. Your average product even now is about $2. We're available around 6,000 stores in Sri Lanka, supermarkets, pharmacies, all that kind of thing. Being in that business in the early 2000s, we were in a situation where Sri Lanka's economy was not growing. We have a small economy to start with, and my brother and I were young. We were quite driven to make it, as you say, and this just didn't seem to grow given where Sri Lanka was. So that's when we started brainstorming as to what can we do to create something that had the legs to go international, that had some sort of growth potential. And that's when we started doing a lot of research into what the world was looking for. The big one, after looking, we thought we'll go out to the world, find the pieces, bring it back, assemble it, and create some sort of brand. But trying to do that over and over again, we couldn't differentiate enough to create something that could have impact. That's when we started looking at human behavior, at consumer behavior, really. And we saw this big drive of everyone going green. I mean, of course, it's still there today, very much so, and it's very much a thing now. But at that time, people were just starting to go green. Yoga was just blowing up all over the world. So the old sciences were coming into play as well. And that's when we realized that Sri Lanka had this amazing science of Ayurveda. And we started delving into that from a cosmetic point of view. How could we bring it to hair care, beauty care, and so on and so forth? And as we started developing and learning about Ayurveda, we understood that this here was a science of life by definition as well, Ayur as in life and Veda as in and science. And this had so much benefit beyond just beauty or hair care and so on and so forth. And that's when Sparsilon developed into being not just a cosmetic brand or a beauty care brand or a natural brand, but to being a wellness brand. And the more we dive deeper and deeper into Ayurveda, we understood the potential and the power it had to reach out to the world, really, as a healing science. And that's when we started getting deeper and deeper into it.
Gotcha. So we're gonna go more into the business a bit later on, but I'm still quite intrigued. There's a lot of my audience, a chunk of my audience are in the Middle East, but we're getting quite a broad international audience now. Tell us a bit about Sri Lanka. I think Sri Lanka, somewhere I'm very fortunate to call home now. But tell us a bit about what growing up in Sri Lankan households like. Tell us a bit about what the virtues are. Just so help people understand that, because I think it's really important that they do.
I think there are many versions of a Sri Lankan household, but in a larger sense, Sri Lankans are very warm people. We're very hospitable. We'll have a good time. It's something about islands and people, yeah. And growing up in my household, I grew up in the city. Again, there was a lot of my parents or my family asked only two things of the children. One is we follow some faith. The other one is we get educated.
Mhm.
So the faith was to make sure you had some moral background to your life, and the education was what was going to set you up for what was coming in the future. And those two things were paramount in the home. You do whatever you want, but these two things have to be a part of your life. Although coming from a business family, my mother never insisted we work in her business. My dad was an entrepreneur as well, never insisted I worked in his business. They wanted us to get educated and do our own thing. It just so happens that we fell back into our mother's industry. So growing up, it's very family oriented. You had your family nucleus at home, but you still kept in touch with your cousins, your extended families from both ends. Your Christmases are big because although a bulk of Sri Lanka is Buddhist, we grew up as Roman Catholics. Christmases were big. It's a lot of getting together as families and doing stuff. You go on trips. Your cousins come and stay with you. You go stay with them. It's very family oriented that way, and it's such a sharing culture as well. Someone comes over, no one announces they're coming, or they suddenly show up, and there's always food for everyone. And it's a very hospitable culture in that sense. I guess it's changed a little over time, but that level of hospitality is there. So even though both my brother and I studied overseas, the last day of my last exam, I flew back and never wanted to go back again because I just love it here. There's Sri Lanka inside of me. I cannot leave. I love everything about it. I love the weather. I adore the food. I spend 4 days without eating Sri Lankan food because I travel a lot and I almost get the jitters. I love the people. I love how we are relaxed. You can be relaxed and driven at the same time. It's a funny mix. And I like how people treat people as well. It's still very human. The interactions are still very human, if you get what I mean by it, yeah. And that sense is still there. Also, it's a stunning country. It's such a I've lived in Sri Lanka all my life. I'm still discovering the beauty of Sri Lanka. I mean, for people who don't know, who's listening here, we have the highest density of waterfalls in the world. We have the highest density of Asian elephants in the world. We have beaches all around the island, and each beach is different from the sand to the waves. We are always on season at some point of the time of the island because of the way we are positioned. Amazing rainforest in the middle. We've got a dry area towards the east and the lower south. We've got beautiful tea plantations in the center of the island, which again is a completely different trip. And in such a small place, you could travel 1 hour this way, 2 hours this way, 1.5 hours this way, and it's so different. On your journey from Galle to here, you would have seen how the 48 changes and everything changes as you go. It's amazing that you can capture so much in such a tiny little country, because if you think of it, you're 400 kilometers one way and 290 kilometers the other. We're tiny, but there's so much to see. There's so much to do. And the culture, we've got 5,000 years of culture. If you look at Spa Ceylon as a brand, you'll see we're vibrant, there's flowers, there's designs, there's textures. All that comes from the culture of Sri Lanka, and it's 5,000 years of very rich culture and layers and layers and layers of it. We're very unique in the fact that even our language spoken here, Sinhalese, is only spoken here. A lot of our art, yes, it has Indian inspiration, but it is our own. Even our Ayurveda, which again, India is considered the home of Ayurveda, but the Ayurveda we have here is around the kind of ingredients that are found on our soil, so it's a little different. So it's a very unique place, and to have so much uniqueness in such a small space is unbelievable, and I wouldn't give it up for the world.
No, I mean, it's obviously I've gravitated and now here myself, so I completely, agree with everything that you've said there. What I would like to understand though, because I'm a new kid on the block, right? And I come from, I suppose the city I've come from, Dubai, very entrepreneurial city. One of the things about Dubai that I will say, the dust and the traffic gets on my nerves a bit, but the networking, the ease, etc., the access to entrepreneurism, that's fantastic. For you growing up in Sri Lanka, you sound like you had two entrepreneurial parents. Is that typical?
Well, for Colombo, yes.
Okay.
A lot of people in Colombo, you had at least one entrepreneur. It's just so that because Colombo is the business capital for all these years and still is. So people who lived in Colombo generally were in some sort of entrepreneurship or involved, or there was some sort of generational business they were part of. So that is typical. Even now, like most parts of the world, I work with young people a lot in terms of entrepreneurship. I'm the chairperson of the Startup Council of Sri Lanka as well. There is a huge drive, like everywhere else in the world, for entrepreneurship. Given that Sri Lanka hasn't always been the easiest place to be an entrepreneur, because a lot of what you needed to build. So we saw that as an advantage, because here was almost a clean slate, not too many people fighting for the same thing. So if your infrastructure was not there, you just built it, and you made it happen. Sri Lanka is small enough to incubate something and large enough to scale it before you take it out, which is what's so interesting about it. So even when we started Spa Salon, it was the first premium beauty care kind of segment in Sri Lanka, and there was nowhere to sell it. All our cosmetics were sold in either supermarkets or what we call fancy good shops, which are shops that sell everything from buttons to ribbons to cosmetics. This is 16 years ago. And we had to figure out, okay, where do we sell this? Now we've come up with this, where do we sell it? So the first thing we did was go to places our target audience would hang out in. And they had never sold cosmetics before. They had never sold personal care before. And we started creating that channel. And then, of course, we then started creating our own stores because we wanted to create something bigger. So a lot of what was not there, we built. Even when Spa Salon was first started, we couldn't find people to work in our stores because we had the name Spa on it. So I don't know if you know about this cultural thing we had in Sri Lanka for a while. And I think Spa Salon was very instrumental in changing it, where when you said spa, the perception was something else, that it was something indecent and something where, because, the podcast so I can talk about. So sexuality in Sri Lanka, though, the discussion about sexuality is, I think, culturally not something you have openly. We don't talk about that. So spas used to be thought of as brothels almost. Fair enough, that's how this started out. But so if you even went to a spa back then, let's say 16 years ago, they were either at 5-star hotels, the proper ones, or tucked away somewhere because you didn't even want to tell people you were going into a spa. Because of that, people didn't want their sons and daughters working in anything called spa. But over the years, Spa Salon has completely changed the perception of this word spa as well, because we are bold and out there. You've seen the buildings. We've got humongous stores right out there. People are really happy to be shopping with us. They're clicking pictures of their bags, of the stores, all that, and things have changed dramatically. But it was an interesting time when you build a brand and no one wants to work for you.
You know what? Now you put that into context, I can see that's a bit of a challenge, right?
Yeah, that was one. The other big one was Ayurveda. So Ayurveda, although it's just amazing science, in Sri Lanka, Ayurveda was the poor man's medicine.
Right.
And here we are trying to build a high-end brand with the poor man's medicine, and people are like, it's smelly, it's not for us, and so on. So we had to make it sexy, if you will, or glamorize it enough so it did appeal as a high-end cosmetic. But it was an uphill task, but we got it done.
Gotcha. So when you finished your education, which obviously you said to your parents, this is, I'm going to do this. I saw you, Macquarie University,
yes.
Was that you were? So when you came back, did you go straight into the world of entrepreneurism?
No. So came back, I was actually going to work outside. I was interviewing with a large FMCG company, a multinational. This started with a huge number of people, and it came down to like 3 people. And on the day of that interview, one of the managers working for my mom's business, we were supposed to go out, interesting enough, to do a show in Dubai, Beauty Middle East, way back when. And for some reason, this guy had to be moved out of his role. And then suddenly we had spent a lot of money at that stage. Mom's brand was not as big, and there was no one to represent. And there was this, and therefore I said, okay, I'll go. I'll give it up. Look, there'll be other interviews. Next thing you know, I did the show, came back. I had taken on some of the tasks this guy was doing, and I was in the business. So then my brother was running the business for Mom, and at that point I said, you know what, I'm going to stick around. He said, okay, but you go start at the bottom. You're starting as a management trainee, go work all around Sri Lanka. So I've actually worked all around Sri Lanka with the sales reps, and made my way up that business first as an employee. Pretty much till the time, by the time I had made myself up to a senior manager, when we started discussing Sparsalon and can we do it, I wasn't even a director at that time. And that's when it all came together.
I'm intrigued, because I've spoken to a couple of entrepreneurs that started. They started at the let's call it the bottom of their industry, but they talk a lot about that what they learned by being on the ground, talking to people, served them so well into the business. What can you share to our audience? What you took from that experience?
It taught me the industry really. When there's no better way to learn any industry than watching people shop and watching people sell. So working for my mom's business, I worked with the sales rep that sold into the stores. And then you have that conversation with the shop owner or shopkeeper or the buyer. And those conversations are all about, okay, for your space, how much revenue will I get and what it takes to sell in and all that. You understand that. Then I spent a lot of time on ground watching people shop. Watching is something I do to the day. Watching people shop is unbelievably insightful. There shouldn't be any CEO who doesn't spend time watching people shop, because the amount you learn from that is crazy. To date, I have input into product development and positioning and so on from things I learned watching people shop then. I still spend a lot of time watching people shop, both our brands and other people's brands. Because I'll give you a simple example. Back in the day, we used to do lip balms for my mom's brand. It was a lip balm in a twist top kind of lipstick kind of container, and it was sold just like that. And you go into one of these pharmacies or fancy goods shops, and people would ask for lip balms, and they'll pick up a box from under the counter full of lip balms, and then the customer would pick up the lip balm and read what it was about and buy it. So I started seeing the customer do this, and the customer had to hold it and turn it around. And every time they turned it around, their finger would cover part of what we were trying to sell them on. So came back with this insight and said, hey, we need to do this. So we put a backing card on the lip balm. So same lip balm, but it's got a backing card on all the information there. In a matter of 3 months, our sales went up 4 times. The next 3 months, it went up further. Pretty soon, we were the top tier of the lip balm market. Tiny little observation. So things like that have happened so many times that till you were in the store and watching the process, you wouldn't learn.
Yeah.
And lots of young people that ask me, that come and tell me I want to be an entrepreneur in fashion, clothing, and I said, go work retail. What you learn working retail, as the conversations you have with the people buying it, how people pick things off shelves, how people look at labels, what people say after they put that, it's unbelievable. And that's where, because for me, entrepreneurship should start from the consumer backwards, because you really need to figure out who's buying what you're buying and why they're buying it, and deliver value so that they buy it. And you can't do it unless you're walking in their shoes and understanding what you're doing. And where you learn that is on the shop floor.
Yeah. You learn sales skills as well.
Absolutely.
Which seems to be the foundation for everything, right?
Of course. So unless you know what it takes to sell in, how do you create that marketing from being in an office,
Mm.
unless you don't understand how your consumers ask for things, for instance, right? So we used to do, particularly in mass market, this work. So you can do all the branding in the world, and let's say you're selling face wash, and my mom's brand's name was Janet.
Mm.
So instead of saying Janet face wash, they'll come and say, oh, Janet's green face wash, because they'll identify it by the packaging at that level of the market. So we started understanding how important color coding was. And we ensured that the color coding was carried through all the marketings. And you made it simple enough to come and say, hey, give me that green one, give me that red one.
Mm.
So even when we did hair care, we made sure the red one was for this kind, the green one was this kind. So it just simple things.
Makes a lot of sense.
No, absolutely.
And when I get my orders from my mum for your products, by the way, she always, the pink grapefruit one, she always tells me, she tells me the colour. So there we go. Okay, so let's go back to your journey. So you've gone around Sri Lanka.
Yeah.
You know, you've understood what the consumer wants. At what point, and did you think, right, okay, we're onto something here? And who came up? Who spoke to who? Was it you to your brother, or vice versa?
Again, my brother was running mom's business as well, and we sat down and he said, look, this is not scaling big enough. Our economy is, nothing's happening. The civil war was on.
Right.
We had tried to take my mom's brand out several times, but since it was mass market, the price point was low. There was never enough margin unless you manufactured in a given country, and we didn't have the scale to do that. So we had the conversation and said, look, we need to do something that has the legs to go outside, because doing it only in Sri Lanka, particularly at that point, there was very little growth. And that's when this whole thing started happening. And then we started researching and putting things together, sitting down almost every other day with the ideas. We traveled a bit, learned, looked at beauty shows, see what was happening, and just constantly throwing things on the drawing board and then starting again and over and over and over again. And that's when we came across this and fine-tuned. Of course, we had the luxury of having the back end of mom's business to develop this from. We had a small factory, we had a small back office, we had people who could help. So that was a really big cushion or a foundation to stand on.
Okay. And what was the conversation with your folks like when you were telling them this? I think I'm onto something here.
Oh, mom loved it.
Really?
She loved the fact that we were getting so into it. She loved the fact that we were doing something that could go out. She was just always so proud of. She saw the start of the success of the brand.
Okay.
Not so much scale, but she saw the start of the success. She saw the brand going places her brand couldn't go, and she just loved it.
And did you get any pushback at all from the family?
Not at all.
No, from your siblings? No.
Nothing at all.
Wow.
It's people also ask us how it works now, because we have 4 siblings working together still. Yeah. We have 2 from the next generation as well. So I've got my nephew and niece working with us, and they're not that much younger than me. They're only about 4 years younger than me. But somehow we've managed to just maintain it very, very well. We also come from a culture where there's a lot of respect for older siblings and a lot of reverence, and you address them differently. You don't use first names, so on and so forth. However, when we sit around a boardroom, I mean, within the organizations, different siblings do different things, and different siblings are at different levels.
Yeah,
and it's never a problem.
You can, they know who the boss is, do they?
No problem at all. So
yeah.
you are handled like a professional. Meetings are handled professionally for the input you bring in, and it's gone. You leave the boardroom, and it's different. You meet at home, it's different, and then the way you address someone's different, and so on. So it's an interesting mix.
I'm intrigued. So you got, obviously you've told me about the name and the pushback that you're potentially facing there. You've told me that basically because you say you're bringing Ayurveda to the world. I heard you say this several times. You've heard about perhaps the misconception that there was about that brand within Sri Lanka. So what gave you the confidence to go and launch? Why did you think this was going to work?
a key big one was yoga, really. Yoga was exploding around the world, of course, out of America, but really exploding. And I mean, it had at that point got to about $1 billion industry.
Yeah.
This is something that was sitting quietly in India for thousands of years, and here's now the West has got it and it's going nuts.
Yeah.
So we believed Ayurveda had the same potential. I mean, yoga is within Ayurveda as well. So there was that belief, and understanding consumer was the thing. So I think what we did really well was understand what the consumer perceptions were and where they were looking. And so a certain amount of boldness or arrogance or understanding or optimism or whatever you want to call it. But I think all entrepreneurship has some element of that. Others, you're not going to get up and get going.
Of course, but it's not going to be all plain sailing at the beginning. Now, I've launched a couple of businesses. The first 6 months that's where you learn. That's where you go, right, in fact, we're going through it right now with something we recently launched where we thought the market would want this, and the market has told us after 4 months that they quite clearly don't want that, but actually they want X. Tell me a bit about that learning experience, those first few months.
Well, again, a lot of it came from how we had to scale. So at the start, we couldn't afford to even have too much color in our packaging because there are MOQs. Our whole range was green. People finding it very hard to figure out how to pick between one and the other. Like I said, the difficulty after we created the brand, we started thinking, okay, where are we going to sell this? Got over that by creating the channel. Then as we started to grow, actually we also got very fortunate. Fortune favors the brave, apparently. So 2009 we launched. So we conceptualized this at a time we're thinking, hey, Sri Lanka's not going anywhere, economy is stuck, all that. 2009 the war ends, pretty much as we are establishing or launching. And next thing you know, tourists are flooding into the country, things are changing, infrastructure is changing, things are starting to look better. And along with the tourism came lots of people seeing the brand and saying, hey, this looks cool. Can we take it across? Now, we always knew we built this to take to the world, but we hadn't properly incubated it. And here there were people coming months in really and saying, hey, I want to take it to this place, I want to take it to that place. So we did end up signing some pretty bad contracts for initial distribution where it just fell flat. We got really excited as well, and a lot of those initial contracts are really bad and got us nowhere.
You've not still got any of them, have you?
No, we don't. No, we don't. It had no chance really. But it goes, I mean, it's taught us patience now, and diligence and all that, which is a learning experience. We also realized we had to fine tune the look and feel. Our initial gift packaging, which we thought was really cool, because if Prada can do it and Gucci can do it, why can't we do black boxes and so on and so forth? We did the black boxes, but no one bought the black boxes. And then we realized, because particularly in Asia, black is not auspicious.
Right.
So that was a learning, completely changed that.
So it goes kind of against everything that you've described what the brand is now, the colors, the vibrancy and everything. It was like you were battling, you were being contradictory to what you actually are now.
Yeah. So I think not contradictory per se, but let's call it an evolution, right?
Yeah.
Because the formulation side of it, the products, the stories behind the product, all that was pretty tight.
Yeah.
The formulations were good. The products were working. People who used it really loved it. But we had to fine tune the look and feel of the brand, and what we could offer. And there were a lot of restrictions because of how much we could spend and invest in doing that. But again, what we managed to keep consistent is, even when we went out and did that, we kept it very unique to Sri Lanka. We kept it very authentic to Sri Lanka. So every color that came in, every design that came in, everything that built into the brand continued to be on story, continued to be on brand as per what we developed Sparsit on. It's just that we fine-tuned it to a level that it could stand out stronger.
Got you. And at what point did you think, I think we might be onto something here?
Yeah, so the interesting thing is, now, so 2009 we launched and we're going pretty well. The brand is going. There's international interest. We had built our own stores about 2 years in as well, and then the store concept started growing into a very immersive kind of store, and so then we want to take this and take it to the world. We started opening stores around the world as well, and then we're thinking, hey, things are going well. This looks like a good format, and then suddenly COVID hits. So COVID hits, and particularly in Sri Lanka, we were 70% tourist oriented at the time. So we were pitched at fairly high end, and about 70% of our revenue was coming from tourist oriented businesses, whether it was resort or even in Colombo. And the other 30% was very high end Colombo centric audiences. So 1 week goes, 2 week goes in, and then me and my brother sat down. I was like, hey, this might take a little while longer than we expected. Now here we are, very brick and mortar heavy. Extremely brick and mortar heavy. At that time, our online sale was dismal, and everything we spoke of the brand was very sensory and very immersive in store. Now here we are with nowhere to open any stores, and we don't know what to do with the brand now. Tourism's gone to zero as well. We have no way to service the 30% local, high-end local market because we are used to selling in store. So we had to completely rethink what we were doing. So at that point, we decided we really need, from a Sri Lanka context, we really need to go after the local market as well and expand what this brand meant to Sri Lankans beyond just tourism and being Colombo-centric. And at that point, we had to make the conscious decision to start communicating in Sinhalese and Tamil as well and go a little wider. Everyone told us not to do it. Everyone said, you're going to lose the premium nature of the brand. You're going to kill your brand. Don't do it. But we had the conversation. We had the option of using social media, which allowed us to segment and still keep the aspiration level and go. And we did it. We made it wider, and in a matter of 8 months, we bridged the 70% we were getting from tourist-related businesses with local audiences. We grew through COVID, and we grew in that period, which was post-COVID as well. And that created a whole new wave of growth for Sparsalon in Sri Lanka. Outside of Sri Lanka, there was stops and starts. But also what we did in that period is we learned how to use digital to communicate the brand, which we didn't really know. And that has really helped us now, because now we know how to do it in Sri Lanka and outside of Sri Lanka. And I don't know if you saw some of the content that was going out in the last week. We opened in Kurunegala. So Kurunegala is a city about 2 hours away from Colombo. And if you asked me in 2009, 2010, 2011, if you ever opened in Kurunegala, I would have said, are you nuts? Why would we do that? But we did. And there were lines of people. We needed crowd control. There were lines of people for the opening weekend just flocking in. And that's what the brand's become now. It's kind of like having a Sephora where people are just... and which is amazing how the brand has evolved that way as well.
So you mentioned COVID as being a tough time, but I've been coming to Sri Lanka for a long time, and it's had its fair share of incidents, or should we say, things that have hit the tourism industry specifically. There was in 2019. How did that kind of give you a taste of what you needed to do pre-COVID? And the reason I say this is I speak from personal experience. My business in my headhunting firm, which I suppose got quite well known for in Dubai, I thought we were bulletproof, right? We were absolutely scaling. I paid very little attention. I didn't have any oil clients actually, but I was quite conscious that oil price was quite high. And you may or may not remember in 2015, 2016, around that time, the oil price collapsed. And at that time, I'd opened a Hong Kong business, a London business. I'd just set up my Singapore office. I'd opened up a couple other brands, and I invested in a technology company. I mean, I didn't know what I was thinking. Sort of spread myself way too thin. But my funding vehicle, which I thought was bulletproof, unfortunately got completely smacked by the oil price crashed. But it turns out all my marketing and advertising clients, which my recruitment business placed marketing professionals, was kind of linked to the oil price in some way, shape or form. So it was like death by 1,000 cuts. However, what I will say about that experience was that when COVID happened, I was pretty, I'd been through that and I earned my stripes. And I knew, okay, my emergency procedure, my operations book was in pretty good health, right? For yourself, having opened up and, you glossed over expanding internationally, by the way, that's no mean feat. Had you probably been through your fair share of incidents up until then? Did that really help you in what was going on? I get the digitalization and everyone had to do that, right? But from a business perspective, how resilient were you by then?
Well, realistically, COVID was a big one for us. Right. So pre-COVID, we had some ups and downs, but realistically, our growth was pretty good. The attention we were getting for the brand was fantastic. The width we had created for the brand was pretty good internationally as well. We had a decent growth rate in terms of international growth year on year. So things are looking very good.
Yeah.
So we hadn't been tested pre-COVID to that extent. Pre-COVID was the ultimate test because it fundamentally got us to look at the way we did business. Because we were very heavy brick and mortar. And had we continued on that line and not properly got on digital marketing, not properly got on e-commerce, we've been in trouble, deep trouble right now.
Yeah. Because
brick and mortar everywhere is very dicey, very expensive, and so on. So we had a very tunnel vision when it came to brick and mortar. We believed that was the only way to do it because we were touch, smell, feel industry, and we were not really looking at digital as even anything significant, which was ridiculous when you come to think of it.
When you think about that.
Yeah. So our argument was, well, look, unless you touch it, smell it and feel it, you're not going to get the sense of it without understanding, hey, you can communicate. So COVID in that sense was a big test, but it was also, since we reacted so fast and we evolved so fast in the way we did business, we learned a lot. And that's what's been the success. So like I said, we grew through COVID ultimately. So we had a very small down period. That's it. But the rest of it, we grew through COVID.
Yeah.
Plus what we learned through COVID is what's helping us continue to grow now, both here and our other markets. So now certain of our other markets overseas, we've taken on ourselves and we are running ourselves because we have like a international distributor franchise kind of model, but we're now slowly taking markets back and running it ourselves. And a lot of that learning came very fast in that COVID period and the period after that. And it forced us to evolve. It forced us to rethink the way we did business. And the fact that we were agile enough to respond to it, I think, is the reason we're still around and still growing.
Got you. Now, I've also seen, I've been going into your stores for quite. There's one in Gaul right near. Yep. There's one at Unawatuna as well, actually. So I've gone in. I've seen how they've changed and evolved. Right. I've noticed you starting looking after men now. So people are like, there's stuff for me.
Yeah.
You've changed. It looks like there's been a bit of an evolution. What's made you move into the male market? What's made you broaden things out more? What's made you want to go down this international path? It seems to be like an ambition to do more. Where's that coming from?
It's again looking at where consumers are going, looking at how the brand is perceived by people. The brand is now getting more traction as not just a cosmetic brand or not just a wellness brand, but almost a lifestyle brand. So men were already buying products, but what it takes to communicate to men is you have to narrow it down. We're far more simple creatures than the females. So we had to narrow it down so that they understand, okay, this is for me and therefore I need to buy it. So one thing was to narrow it down and create a range of men's products specifically for men so that they could identify it as well. Because male grooming is becoming a thing across the world, and we needed to get a piece of that. The rest of the things, I don't know if you've seen, we've also gone into homeware, we've gone into some clothing, we've gone to home aromas, all that, because what's happening with the brand is becoming a lifestyle brand. People love the designs. People like the look and feel. We're also very unique in the way we present ourselves, and people are happy to take another piece of it in. They'll say, "Oh, I'll put this in my home," or "I'll take this, or I'll gift this to someone." We're a big gift brand as well. So we're constantly looking at how we can leverage on that. From a business side, we've got a very strong back end in terms of how we operate, in terms of how we manufacture. Also, something that a lot of people don't know is that we are also the manufacturer. So we develop the product, we manufacture the product, we market the product, and so end to end, it's all us. And because of our manufacturing capabilities, because of our ability to scale the back end as well, we can get into a lot more and a lot faster. So our reaction time to even international trends is much faster because we are the developer, we are the manufacturer.
Gotcha. So a lot of businesses, when they launch, one of the struggles that they have is making money and having cash. It's like cash. Cash is king, as they say. In those early days, and to get to where you've got now, I mean, just give us an understanding of. And I think it's important to understand for those people listening and watching. You kind of rapidly expanded internationally. How did you manage to take that on? Have you funded this all yourself? Did you take external investment? What sort of journeys have you been on there?
So we're still privately owned. How we did the international funding was that we created a franchise model.
Yep.
Which outlined every aspect of what the store needed to be. And then we've got people to invest in the franchise or a distribution structure. We would have never been able to get to so many countries so fast had we had to invest ourselves, because it's just impossible. So we threw all our money and resources into product development, from end to end, from formulation to the way it looked, and creating the brand. And we made it attractive enough that people point and say, "Hey, I'll give that a go." And we put a good framework in that it could be replicated. And we made it as easy as possible for people to replicate it once we gave them the building blocks to build. And that's how we get it. So the capital intensiveness of our model was severely reduced for us by creating that franchise model and putting it out there. The other thing that helped us, by running Sri Lanka ourselves and being end-to-end from manufacturer to retailer, we retain all the earnings from it. So we didn't have margins being cut across. So Sri Lanka became kind of where what allowed us to make the money to fund continued investment into the brand to make it attractive enough for other people to take it out.
Got you. And so coming into COVID, how reliant, what was the business look like coming into COVID? How localized and international was it? Because a lot of tourists stopped coming in 2019. So you would have, I guess you'd have had to have a pretty solid market in Sri Lanka by the time COVID came.
No, we didn't. So as of 2019, we were still very heavy tourism industry related. So you're talking about what we do in terms of hotel supplies, what we do in terms of retail in tourist areas, what we do in Colombo, for, again, tourism related and very Colombo centric. So we went wider in a Sri Lankan context after COVID or within COVID. And even in that COVID period, our stores internationally one would shut down 1 month, then that will open up, and the next one shut down. So everything was everywhere. And then the shipping became ridiculously expensive. And then getting product across became difficult. Timelines became difficult. Then we had a fuel crisis in Sri Lanka where we couldn't operate our factories certain days. Even if we operated the factories, we didn't have fuel for our trucks to carry the products to the port certain days. So it's been a crazy run. Then that ended, and we had this whole political unrest for another 3 to 4 months where we couldn't operate all our stores. People didn't want to come in. People couldn't get to work. So Sri Lanka has been an interesting place to do business. But what I will say is that we are ridiculously resilient, possibly as Sri Lankans as well, because we've seen it all go down several times over and over, and we bounce back very fast. And we don't really give up on it because we know, look, this too shall pass.
Yeah. So, Shalan, just tell us, where exactly is the business today, and what's your future plans for it?
So currently we are the largest luxury Ayurveda chain in the world in terms of a global footprint. We've got 145 locations across 31 countries and growing. What's happened recently is we've been taking on certain strategic countries ourselves. We've been handling India for a while, but now we've taken on the UK ourselves. We've gone to UAE ourselves. We just launched in the UAE. Something we wouldn't have done pre-COVID, we launched digitally because, as you would know, getting space in the UAE, it's a waiting list to get in the right places. So while we do that, we've launched digitally. We are doing all that. So there is a lot of growth we're looking at from Europe on one end, because we've been in Europe and Eastern Europe for quite a while. There's also massive Ayurveda knowledge there, which we want to tap into. The growth in the GCC is what we're looking at through the UAE push. We're in Saudi Arabia as well. We see a lot of potential there, particularly on the wellness side. So overall, we're pretty bullish about what the brand can do in the next 5 years. We are looking for pretty significant double-digit growth across markets. We are not going into the US side of things yet. We believe there's a lot more potential we haven't tapped into in Asia and Middle East and Europe, and a lot of focus is going to be on that.
I know from talking to other entrepreneurs, though, cracking the European market with the health and regulations and all the various, governing bodies there are, that must have been a whole new world and different strain.
Strangely, we've been in Europe for a while. So the good thing for us, you could take it as a positive or a negative. With Europe, it's one registration. So you get all your EU countries with one registration, and we are compliant across. So it hasn't been a problem. It's expensive, but it's one registration. So if you know what you're doing and you've been doing it for a while, it's pretty straightforward. So in that sense, no. The most stringent regulations we've had is Japan. And again, we've been in Japan for a while. It's one of our most successful markets as well. So given how compliant we are, it hasn't been a problem for us.
Got you. And for yourself, what's your own personal ambition? Where do you want to take this? What do you want to do with your life? Yeah.
What's happened is when Spa Salon came about, it was very business. It was young, you want to make some money, all that. But now it's become this. Apart from, yes, of course, it has to make financial sense, but now it's become this real personal growth or within us that we want to take a piece of Sri Lanka to the world, because Spa Salon represents so much of what we are, and every location is like planting a small beacon of what we are, and I get a lot of satisfaction of that. You would have noticed that when I started talking about Sri Lanka earlier. So the fact that I can take and tell the story of my little island to different parts of the world, it gives me goosebumps even now. Different parts of the world really makes me happy. I mean, I wake up in the morning excited about that, and that's a real satisfying thing. Plus, what we do is really good for people. It's wellness oriented. It's about tapping into the healing benefits of your body and mind, and it's giving people really good product that's going to change their lives. That's going to change the way they look at wellness, the way they look at skincare, the way they look at hair care, and being able to do that in such a unique way, and it's also authentic way that comes from my little island. It's very satisfying.
I love it. Amazing. Now, we've got a bit of tradition on this podcast. We always like our guests to kind of share some insights to future entrepreneurs. So what advice would you give to any aspiring or current entrepreneur out there?
Well, the most basic thing is, I think I mentioned this earlier as well, you must think from consumer backwards. You can build the best thing in the world in a little black box somewhere and bring it out, and it'll just fail. You have to think of how it's going to affect your consumer's life and what problems you're solving for them. That's a big one. The next one is speed. I think we live in a world now, speed is everything. Things are changing so fast. Get it out and fine tune once it's out there. Find good incubation spaces or markets to do that in, and get it out as soon as you can. Moving from minimum viable to something you can take to the market fast is very, very important. The next one is fairly obvious, but work on what your communication angle is going to be from the product development stage onwards, so that you know what you need to say about your product at every stage. And when you get out there, you have a unique story to tell. The world is looking for unique products, and standing out is the biggest problem right now, grabbing attention. So figure that out, because again, it's not great products that win. It's products that have a place in people's lives and get people's attention. So we have to think about that.
And specifically for Sri Lanka, what message would you give to any aspiring Sri Lankan entrepreneurs out there?
Big one for me is leverage Sri Lanka. Sri Lanka is still largely unknown. Sri Lanka's culture is unknown. Sri Lanka's what grows on our soil is unknown. The wealth we have in history is unknown. Arts and culture is relatively unknown. And in a world looking for unique things, we've got a crap load of it here. Leverage that.
Brilliant. Thank you so much for sharing your story today. I really appreciate getting to know you. Thank you again. Guys, I hope you enjoyed this episode, and we look forward to seeing you on the next show. Thanks a lot.